Just as in politics, the responsibility for the fate of freedom in the world has devolved upon our regime, so the fate of philosophy in the world has devolved upon our universities, and the two are related, as they've never been before. The gravity of our given task is great, and it is very much in doubt how the future will judge our stewardship. Such is Alan Bloom's critique of the modern American university. The House of Churchill proposes that you should think of the university as the guardian of freedom. I want to narrow this lecture to universities and popular governments, because the university's role varies with certain social needs. While aristocracies and monarchies need a few excellent citizens to rule well, democratic societies rule collectively. All are monarchs. The people in the states are sovereign. Thought of in that way, the university's task is to train the populace to rule itself. An engineering degree will not carry the same lessons as a liberal arts degree, but to the extent that universities give greater competency, and therefore power, they have a duty to teach the use of that power. Degrees neither are nor ought to be purely vocational, because all useful lessons should come with moral instructions in their appropriate use. So to explore this task, I'll explain the connection between education and freedom, the vices peculiar to popular government, and the particular duties of a Christian university. There are many different kinds of freedom. One kind is a moral freedom of individuals, the freedom taught by the liberal arts. Another kind, and one to focus on, is political freedom. Of this, John Witherspoon said that civil liberty cannot be long preserved without virtue. A republic must either preserve its virtue or lose its liberty, and by some tumultuous revolution either return to its first principles or assume a more unhappy form. There's a critical link between freedom and civic virtue. Like much in the founders' thought, this virtue is not the rigorous demands of the saint, but the practical virtue of the honest shopkeeper, a conscientious farmer, or a just statesman. It's a republican virtue. Good laws cultivate a culture of civic virtue, although William Penn observes that while good laws do well, good men do better. For while good laws may want good men and be abolished or invaded by ill men, good men will never want good laws or suffer ill ones. To train up good men, Penn believes that wisdom and virtue must be carefully propagated by a virtuous education of youth. If our nation retains freedom, it's only because we retain some basic republican virtue. Why is that? Well, true human freedom is the power to do right. But what we protect in individual liberty is the freedom from burdensome restraint. This is a truly modern conception of freedom. Benjamin Constant explains that our freedom must consist of peaceful enjoyment and private independence. Individual liberty is the true modern liberty. Political liberty is its guarantee. Consequently, political liberty is indispensable. So what Constant is saying is that meaningful participation in the regime is a safeguard of the individual's inviolable personal sphere. Individuals learn that they earn that freedom from restraint by acting such that restraint is not necessary. That means honestly reporting taxes, not littering, purchasing health insurance, or keeping protest demonstrations orderly. Without this basic republican virtue, the state must either endure disorder or impose restraint against license. So how does the university help with all of that? Well, the university trains leaders. These are not aristocrats and may even have ordinary desk jobs, but there's still the managerial element in an economy and a society. So these leaders have a profound influence by example and by policies they create. Thus, the university ought to mold citizens who will lead with competent thinking and a basic moral concern. This is a duty because it's incumbent upon one who teaches the how and the why to also teach the when. Everyday leaders use the writing, thinking, and other proficiencies that they learned in college. If college teaches these, it is thereby obligated to also teach how these instruments ought to be employed. An equal society like ours tends towards specific vices. De Tocqueville perceived that democratic individualism tends to make every man forget his ancestors, and encourages a disposition of each member of the community to sever himself from the mass of his fellows, and to draw apart with his family and friends so that he willingly leaves society at large to itself. So equal societies forget and atomize. Amidst the rush to advance, we sacrifice tradition. Cartesian by temperament, as de Tocqueville explains, democratic societies doubt the past's authority. But amnesia is no better for a society than it is for an organism. It means repeating our mistakes, yes, but more than that. It means giving the vogue a credence it does not deserve. To take for an example, after 9/11, no American opposed heightened security. The mindset gelled. Today, after 2 wars, thousands of civilian deaths in drone strikes, a detention center in Cuba, and allegations of American torture, an extraordinary rendition, we no longer ask whether we should put security above expediency, but whether we should allow exceptions for women over 65 in the full-body pat-down in our airports. Pan Am would be scandalized. The mindset change in a paltry 10 to 20 years is powerful and so pervasive that it's difficult to think under a different paradigm. The university should be a place to remember. Faculty should remind aspiring citizens that security is, at most, instrumental. This remembering is not for them alone. Plato's City and Speech, in the Plato's City and Speech, the educated guardian left the cave, but then had to return and go back inside for his fellows. The guardian was to scale that ascent, and when they had reached the heights and taken an adequate view, we must not allow them to linger there. The purpose of the university, like the laws of the republic, should not be the special happiness of any class in the state, but harmony in the city as a whole. Harmony in modern republics requires this republican virtue. Though our attention span is now measured with a ruler rather than a tape measure, we still need Lewis's advice, that every age is specially good at seeing certain truths and specially liable to making certain mistakes. We all need the books that will correct the characteristic mistakes of our own period, and that means the old books. What Lewis is suggesting is that the university has a duty to teach those books, to apply the corrective lens of the ideas of other times and places. A Christian university sees society through the Bible's lens. Colleges like King's use the Bible as an antidote to vice. Cotton Mather explains that Christians have 2 callings. One is a general calling to serve Christ, while the other is a particular calling toward a vocation. Their education should guide them in both. America has no philosopher kings, but millions of tent makers honoring God, as Paul did, with their craftsmanship. So Christian colleges have a corresponding dual duty, to teach students God's truth and to teach profitable skills. Only under God's power does the university flourish in these tasks. This effort, with prayer and divine guidance, is the most profound corrective, the ultimate old book, if you will. Alexander Pope's prologue for Addison's play Cato gives the hope of what this book and its companions in the library of great minds can do. To wake the soul by tender strokes of art, to raise the genius, to mend the heart, to make mankind in conscious virtue bold, live o'er each scene and be what they behold. The duty of the university is to present everyday leaders with virtuous ideas and ways of life to behold, to be, and to remember. Winston Churchill said, "All great things are simple, and many can be expressed in single words: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope." Students need to hear the great things, the simple things, before they join the complex exigencies of their careers. This duty is simple: to restrain individual vices of leaders, and through them, curb societal vice. In giving students the instruments of leadership, universities owe them the safety instructions. To be the guardians of freedom, universities are duty-bound to teach the modest morality that George Washington warned we needed in his farewell address, declaring that morality is a necessary spring of popular government. In proportion as the structure of a government gives force to public opinion, it is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. The people in the states rule, and the guardians of freedom should enlighten.